Hello guys and gals, this is Rick with Man on a Mission Fishing, doing my first video solo. Over the course of the last year or so, there have been a few people that have had some questions about using the Ned Rig or made comments about it. So I thought I would just go over my take on it. Now I have a little bit different view than conventional wisdom. Some people would challenge me on the way I fish it, but I seem to have some success, and so let's go from there. First of all, let's talk about the rod and reel line combo that I like to use. I have right here a 7-foot 1-inch, it's a Shields rod. It's been called my white wizard wand by one of our viewers, and it's a 7-foot 1. It's a medium heavy, and it's got a fast action. Now most people would like to use a longer rod and with a lighter action. The reason I use this will become apparent further into the video. I've got it spooled with line that's a little out of the ordinary as well. I've got regular braid on here. I'm using a suffix braid on here. It's about a 20-pound test, fairly heavy, and my Vanish leader is about a 4-foot length, and that as well is a lot heavier than most fishermen would use on a Ned rig. This runs between about 12 to 14 pounds. Most guys will use maybe 8 pounds, sometimes a lot less depending on the conditions. And I'll also explain the reason that I use that as we move along. The reel's not important. It's a spinning rig. Use whatever you're comfortable with. The reason that I use a rig like this is because as the guy in the back of the boat, I don't have the luxury of bringing along 20 rods and reels and an unlimited amount of tackle. So I make stuff do double duty, and sometimes it's for the better, sometimes it's for the worse. Normally with the Ned rig, you're using it on sand, gravel, rock, that sort of thing. But I've adapted my usage. I will use it on almost all circumstances except very heavy stuff where you would want to use a punch rig. You know, I mostly like to use it on the sand and gravel flats, but when we start getting off of points and start getting into the deeper coontail, I will still use it. I use the heavyweight because when they get on that hook in the deep coontail, they'll get down in there, and if I had 8 or 6 pound test line on there, you'd probably never get them out of there. With a stiffer rod and heavier line, I can usually weasel them out of there. I guess before I proceed with the types of hooks and plastics that I use, I think most people already know what a Ned rig is, but there may be some out there that aren't really sure, and I thought maybe I should go over very quickly exactly what a Ned rig is. It's basically just a jig worm. The difference is that it uses a mushroom-shaped jig head and a buoyant plastic so that it sits pretty much vertically when it's on the bottom. I use almost exclusively the Z-Man weedless, not weedless, but the Z-Man shroom jig heads. There's various sizes. I'm not going to go over all the sizes. I mean, you can see them when you go to the store. I also use the Northland Tackle Nedsters, and this is how they look. They're pretty much the same thing, except they've got a different keeper on them. The Z-Man keeper is a little piece of welded metal. These have a bent piece that goes up into the jig head itself. If the water's extremely dingy, a lot of times I will go with something a little heavier, or I shouldn't say heavier, but a different color, I'll go with the chartreuse, which is a little better visibility in that sort of water. That being said, about the jig heads, I'm going to go over the plastics that I like to use. And I'm back with the Z-Man again. There are innumerable number of other buoyant plastics that you can choose from. I stick with the Z-Man because they have an endless number of different types. And my go-to virtually every day is the Finesse TRD. And this is what they look like. They're a little bit light on one side and a little darker on the other. If the fish seem a little bit more aggressive, I'll go with the big TRD. And of course I'll use a bigger jig head when I use those. Now, there's an endless number of different types, and I find that day after day, the only thing I use are the Finesse and the big TRD. When I carry 4 bags, I'll carry the big TRD in this color, the green pumpkin, and the deal color, and I'll carry the Finesse in the same 2 different colors. So I basically have 4 bags, the 2 colors for each size. Now we'll go over some of the other stuff they have. They have the TRD craws, which is a little craw. They have the TRD hogs, which look like these. They have the little trick shots. They look like these. And they have the TRD minnows, which look like these. Now, in all honesty, these sit in my tackle box, or not in my tackle box, but in my plastics box, and virtually never get looked at. I have used them, and I just don't think that they're any more effective than just the plain old TRDs. So I stick with what works for me, and if you want to experiment with these, maybe you think one day the little craw will work better, try it. But for me, I just don't do it. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is how I work these. Being in the back of the boat, if the boat is moving at a fairly quick pace, I probably won't even throw it, or if I do, it'll be into the shallower water and shorter casts, because I like to work it very slow, and if I start working it slow, then it ends up coming in from the back of the boat as though I'm trolling. If we find a spot where we're following a weed edge and we get out into deeper water and we see a sand flat or a gravel or whatever, and we slow to almost a stop, then I will make the longer casts and I will work it much slower. Okay, I'm going to show you how I like to work it. Let me grab my example over here. This one's beat up because it has been it's been mouthed by many a bass, and it's a little tore up. But anyway, well, I see I have a nick in the line too. I'll have to cut that out, I suppose. Anyway, the way I like to work them is I'll make my cast, and when it lands on the bottom, it's going to sit like this. And as I drag it along, as it hits any little pebble, it's going to jump a little bit. And I'll pause and I'll drag it and it will jump a little bit. And I believe that that almost exactly mimics a minnow that's feeding off the bottom. If you ever watch them off the end of a dock or on the side of the dock, that's exactly what they do. They sit almost vertically, and then they'll pick stuff off the bottom and move a little bit and pick some more off the bottom. And this works perfect for mimicking that. So that's what I'll do, is I'll drag it. If we end up in a spot where the rock is a little bit bigger, well, you can't really drag it easily there because it will hang up. I may drag it, and then if I feel it kind of hanging up on a rock, then I'll give it a little pop. And a lot of times when you give it that pop, that will trigger a reaction bite. The bass thinks the minnow's seen me, it's going to try to get away, it'll go for it right now. And that's also the case even on the sand and light gravel. If nothing is happening, every once in a while I will give it a pop. And that pop can often result in a strike. When we get out on deeper water and we're over the coontail, and if it's deep coontail and the coontail's standing quite a ways off the bottom, then I'll go to the real light jig head. And when I cast that out, I will let it sink slowly, and I'll try to keep kind of a tight line. And the second it hesitates, I know it's sitting on the coontail. I don't want it to plunge down in the bottom because I'm not punching that coontail. I'm triggering the fish that are not laying on the bottom in there, that might be half down, and they can still sense it. They will come up and hammer it, and then you got to get them out of the coontail before they go down in there. A lot of people won't throw this kind of thing into the coontail for that very reason. They got too heavy of a weight on it. Now, it takes a lot of patience because these very light jigs will sink quite slowly, especially when they have a bait on there that's buoyant. So if you're moving fast through that coontail, which you'd be crazy to do that because you can't fish it effectively if you're moving fast through it, no matter what you're throwing in there. But that's how I fish it in the coontail and how I have success with it in that kind of situation. It works virtually anywhere else, as I may have described earlier. I won't throw it in the real heavy slop where you have to punch in order to catch any fish. If the weeds are a little sparse, I'll throw it in there, and the heavier weeds, generally not. I'll go with my jig or my worm in situations like that. The Ned Rig is a very easy rig to use, and it doesn't take much experience with it to kind of get it mastered. So give it a shot sometime. It doesn't take too much, and I guess I don't have much else to say, so I'm going to sign off for Man on a Mission Fishing, for my brother Mark, who's standing over here critiquing me. Thanks for joining. Please like and subscribe. Maybe you'll see me in another video, but after this, probably not.